Chag Sameach. The new year is supposed to mark the end of the old year, but it doesn't when our hostages are still held captive in Gaza. It doesn't when old behaviors we'd like to shake don't disappear overnight. And yet Rosh Hashanah is this gift we get to reboot, to atone, to begin again, to examine ourselves inwardly, to examine our world outwardly, and decide what changes we want to be a part of. There's a poem written by celebrated Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai over 5 decades ago, and yet his words ring ever more true today. He was born in Germany in 1924 and successfully fled during Hitler's rise to power, lucky enough to take refuge in what was then the British Mandate of Palestine when he was just 12. He served alongside the British in World War II and later in the IDF. His experience of war certainly shaped his poetry. He writes, "An Arab shepherd is searching for his goat on Mount Zion, and on the opposite hill I am searching for my little boy. An Arab shepherd and a Jewish father, both in their temporary failure. Our two voices met above the Sultan's pool in the valley between us. Neither of us wants the boy or the goat to get caught in the wheels of the Hadgadyah machine. Afterwards, we found them among the bushes, and our voices came back inside us, laughing and crying. Searching for a goat or for a child has always been the beginning of a new religion in these mountains." A teacher of mine, Rabbi Adam Greenwald, transformed my understanding of this poem. First, the topography matters. Amichai sets the scene on Mount Zion and the hill opposite it, which are separated by a valley. The gaping valley that separates the Arab shepherd and the Israeli father isn't just figurative. It is literally the valley of Hinnom, where we read in the biblical books of Chronicles and Jeremiah, ancient peoples, Jews among them, sacrificed their children to the idols Baal and Molech. This poem is very intentionally set on the hills overlooking the historic valley of Hinnom, or Gehinnom, which is as close as Judaism gets to a concept of hell. War, he writes, can be a Hadgadyah machine, of one loss leading to another loss, leading to another loss, in an endless cycle of victor and vanquished. We're all familiar with this beloved song sung around our Seder tables about this little goat which represents the Jewish people, which God acquired for 2 zuzim, 2 coins, which represent the 2 tablets, our covenant at Sinai. Then came the cat, the dog, the stick. These are the conquerors du jour, the nations that have ruled over and oppressed us throughout history. Then we conclude, after working our way up the food chain, came the Holy Blessed One, who slaughtered the angel of death. The Passover Seder begins with degradation and ends with praise, with redemption, as we imagine a world finally free from the tyranny of death and destruction, where our children are free from the insatiable clutches of the Hadgadyah machine. These 2 men, the Arab shepherd and the Israeli father, call out in their temporary failure to protect the creatures in their care, as they fear the worst has happened. Only their voices meet, because they never will. The intermingling of their anguished cries is the only point of contact between them. Afterwards, we found them among the bushes. All of a sudden, the careful reader notes, Amichai transports us from Mount Zion to Mount Moriah, the site of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, which we read today. God tests Abraham, saying, "Sacrifice to me your son Isaac, whom you love." And Abraham wakes up early to fulfill the will of the Creator. Atop the mountain, Abraham readies his knife, but we know how this song ends. Then came the Holy Blessed One. God stops Abraham, who has passed this test, and instead reveals a ram caught in the thicket. Afterwards, we found them among the bushes, Amichai writes, linking this story to Abraham and Isaac. And our voices came back inside us, laughing, Yitzchak, and crying, a parent's relief. The revolutionary idea that there has to be another way. That unlike the idols Baal and Molech, the God of Israel does not want the blood of our children. Judaism charts a new way forward. Searching for a goat or for a child has always been the beginning of a new religion in these mountains. What is this new religion, Judaism, all about? Two things. First, the arrival at a God worthy of our worship. According to the Midrash, the creative rabbinic commentary, a young Abraham walks into his father's Terach's idol shop. He picks up an axe. He shatters his father's idols one by one. Only he spares the last one and places the axe in its hands of stone. When Terach arrives to see what's become of his gods, he scolds his son. "What have you done?" "I didn't do this," Abraham says. "He did." "That's impossible," Terach says. "Yeah, it's impossible," Abraham replies. "So why worship it?" Abraham, we believe, is the first to arrive at a God worthy of our worship, a singular God of all the universe, a God who judges justly, in Abraham's words, when he challenges God's plan to utterly destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. "Far be it from you to wipe away the good along with the wicked," he says. That's the God worthy of our worship. Our Torah reading today answers the immediate next question, which is, what is worship worthy of our God? What kind of sacrifices are appropriate, acceptable, and good? And what sacrifices, in contrast, might be considered idolatrous? We have been forced to make so many devastating sacrifices these past 2 years. We are trudging through the valley of Gehinnom, still reeling from the very worst of the Had Gadya machine. On October 7th, Hamas terrorists turned our world upside down in the most brutal way imaginable. 719 days later, 48 hostages still remain in captivity in Gaza, less than half believed to still be alive. We honor, memorialize, and are eternally indebted to the brave men and women who defend Israel and the Jewish people against those who seek our destruction. Every Shabbat, here at B'nai Yeshurun, we observe a moment of silence to read the names and stories of our Israeli brothers and sisters, our sons and daughters, fallen in battle or in acts of terror that week, who have made the ultimate sacrifice, willfully or just going about their lives, simply riding on a bus. We read in Psalms, Ohavei Adonai sinu ra. Those who love God despise evil. While our greatest aspiration is to live at peace with our neighbors in our ancestral homeland, we have an obligation to protect ourselves against a hostile world that rejoices in Jewish suffering. On Yom Kippur, we'll dedicate an entire section called Martyrology to our sages and heroes who kept the Jewish flame alive even at the cost of their lives. We'll include victims of October 7th and since. But while defending fellow Jews is a necessary and most honorable sacrifice, there are other sacrifices that as a Jewish people we simply cannot make, no matter how tempting, no matter how understandable it would be to make them. Far be it from us. We cannot sacrifice our deepest held Jewish values on the altar of hate. We cannot sacrifice our humanity on the altar of fear. And in the words of Israel's national anthem, which we've also recited at every prayer service since October 7th, Od lo avda tikvatenu, we must never abandon our hope. These are sacrifices God cannot possibly want from us. Fear, hate, despair, these are idols too, that must be shattered. If not for our sake, then for our children's. Of course we're angry. And anger can serve us. When righteous indignation motivates us to personally participate in building a better future for our children. When it spurs us to deepen our relationship with Israel and helps us feel the urgency of now, because if not now, when? But anger can also be self-destructive. It could prevent us from reaching our promised land. As Rachel Goldberg, mother of Hirsch Goldberg Poland, may his memory always be a blessing, who has every reason to lose herself in an all-consuming rage, but instead always appeals to the best parts of us, wrote, "I understand the hatred of the other. Whoever we decide the other is seductive, sensuous, and most importantly, it's easy. Hatred is easy, but hatred isn't actually helpful, nor is it constructive." Our Talmud in Tractate Shabbat says that anger can amount to idolatry. God instructs Moses to speak to the rock so that it'll gush forth water for the thirsty, exhausted Israelites. But Moses is exhausted too. He can't bear the people's insufferable complaining. And so instead of speaking to the rock, he first speaks harshly to the people. "Listen, you rebels, shall we get water out of this rock for you?" Then he strikes the rock twice, a mistake. But does the punishment fit the crime? God forbids Moses from entering the promised land. Our rabbis in the Talmud argue that this is, in fact, a grave sin that Moses commits. Quoting Psalms, Rabbi Avin says, "Lo hiyevecha el zar, velo tishtachavel el nechar." There shall not be a strange god within you, neither shall you worship a foreign god. Rabbi Avin continues, "And what is the strange god that is within us?" Meaning inside every human being? It is the evil inclination. Anger is a natural emotion. It isn't evil. When it serves us, it's helpful. But when we serve it, then it's idolatry. Moses deals too harshly with the people, and in doing so, misrepresents God, the God who judges justly, the God noten lechem l'chol basar, who gives food to all flesh, who had instructed Moses to let the people drink. Of course, we're angry. How can we not be seething with rage when a starved and emaciated Eviatar David is forced to dig his own grave, when babies are shown no mercy, when Hamas prioritizes its own survival over that of its people, making the cold calculation that Palestinian suffering is an acceptable sacrifice in service of their genocidal aspirations against our people, operating in hospitals, mosques, schools, so that there are no good options for a justified war of defense we never asked for, failing in its own responsibility to distribute aid. According to a recent article published by the AJC, citing data from Israel's coordinator of government affairs in the territories, between May and late August of this year, that aid included over 10,000 trucks with approximately 80% carrying food alongside 5,000 tons of baby food and more than 2,500 tons of medical supplies. In addition to this, airdrops by 12 countries delivered more than 2,300 food packages, while distribution sites continue to serve over 2.2 million weekly food packages to families. No child should be dying of starvation, and yet they are. This war is endlessly complicated and forces us to wrestle with competing Jewish values. On one hand, Maimonides codifies as law in his Mishnah Torah when a poor person whose identity is unknown says, "I am hungry, provide me food." We do not investigate whether he is a deceiver. Instead, we feed him immediately. On the other hand, what if it ends up in the hands of our enemies? And even if it gets to where it's supposed to go, how do we truly distinguish between the innocent and those who would relish in our demise, because the rifts between us are as vast as the valley of Hinnom itself? I don't know. All I know is, far be it from us to wipe away the good along with the wicked. The God worthy of our worship does not ever ask that we sacrifice our concern for the other in the name of love of our own. What is an idol? Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel writes, "Any God who is mine but not yours, any God concerned with me but not with you, is an idol." So while it would be utterly understandable to harden our hearts to their suffering when ours is overwhelming, it is also the antithesis of Judaism, what this new religion is all about. Cut away, God says, the thickening around your heart. Umaltem et orlat levavchem. Circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Jewish hearts do not get to benefit from a protective layer that makes it easier not to feel the pain of others. Because the reason we sing Hadgadyah is that we defeat Pharaoh and must never become him. Which brings us to one last thing we must never abandon or sacrifice: hope. The Israelites take the gold they amassed upon leaving Egypt, and with it, they build the golden calf. You know why they do that? Because they can't wrap their heads around a God who is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I will be who I will be, which is the name God reveals to Moses at the burning bush. The tangible misrepresentation of God, a golden statue of something familiar and recognizable, something unchanging, molten stagnation is easy, to use Rachel Goldberg's words. What's much harder is stretching our imaginations to envision what might be possible. I will be who I will be requires us to shatter the idols that tell us that what can be is only what has always been. To never abandon our hope that the future can look different than today. To take the same gold that we could use to build a golden calf and instead build a mishkan, the portable sanctuary where God dwells among us, Yerushalayim shel Zahav, a Jerusalem of gold, an Israel of our dreams. Od lo adva tikvatenu. Od lo avda tikvatenu. We begin with degradation and end with praise, with redemption. As we imagine a world finally free from the tyranny of death and destruction, where our children are free from the insatiable clutches of the Hadgadyah machine. Avram becomes Avraham as a new religion is born on these mountains. That's how a year becomes new. I want to conclude with one last poem that doesn't set the scene overlooking the valley of hell, but which instead plummets us into its darkest depths. This isn't a Jewish text in any official sense, but you and I can't help read it the same way we would Hadgadyah. It's from a graphic novel called The Sandman by Neil Gaiman. The devil, whom I'll call Hasatan, the accuser who makes occasional appearances in Tanakh, challenges the protagonist, whom I'll call us, to a battle of wits, which goes like this. Hasatan, I am a dire wolf, prey-stalking, lethal prowler. Us, I am a hunter, horse-mounted, wolf-stabbing. Hasatan, I am a horsefly, horse-stinging, hunter-throwing. Us, I am a spider, fly-consuming, eight-legged. Hasatan, I am a snake, spider-devouring, poison-toothed. Us, I am an ox, snake-crushing, heavy-footed. Hasatan, I am an anthrax, butcher bacterium, warm life destroying. Us, I am a world, space floating, life nurturing. Hasatan, I am a nova, all exploding, planet cremating. Us, I am the universe, all things encompassing, all life embracing. Hasatan, I am anti-life, the beast of judgment. I am the dark at the end of everything, the end of universes, gods, worlds, of everything. And what will you be then? Us. I am hope. In the graphic novel, this is where our hero wins the battle of wits. I am hope. Then came the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy Blessed One, who slaughtered the angel of death. Hope as the most powerful force in the world. The triumph of hope is the only Hadgadyah machine we must leave to our children. On Rosh Hashanah, the world is born. What kind of world will we help usher in this year? Searching for a goat or for a child has always been the beginning of a new religion in these mountains. Chag Sameach.